Excellencies, distinguished invited guests, it's a pleasure to have you here for this session. The topic for this session is on climate information and early warning systems. We have all realized the importance of climate information and early warning systems in helping us to manage risk associated with climate variability and change. For this session, we are privileged to have the Honorable Mr. Dimitro Du Amaral de Carvalho, State Secretary for Environment of Timor-Leste, to moderate the session. Please welcome our moderator, the Honorable Dimitro Carvalho. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph Insful. As been highlighted by Mr. Joseph, these sessions will be focused on climate information and early warning system. Again, I am very delighted to moderate these important sessions. The sessions will be discuss a transformational pathway for stabilizing feed for proposed climate informations and early warning system project, based on the draft Green Climate Fund's CIEWS sector guide and other authoritative documents. The discussions will also cover a potential climate information and early warning system fast track, SIP, and programmatic approach and mainstreaming of climate informations and early warning to enhancing multi-sectoral resilience. The outcome of the sessions will be used by the bilateral discussions with interest NDAs and accredited entity for pipeline developments of the project. We will have two main presentations follow up by a panel discussions, questions and answer, and then conclusions of the sessions. Allow me to invite to the stage the main speakers. First of all, I would like to again introduce Mr. Joseph Insifult, Senior Climate Information. Sorry for pronouncing your name maybe incorrect. Senior Climate Information and Early Warning System Specialist, GCF, and Mr. Racio Vesuiti Fernandez, SAP consultant from GCF. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable. I'll be presenting the GCF SEALS sector guide. And by way of introduction, I will provide a context why we have to invest in climate information and early warning systems. I'll talk about the pathways for investments, looking at climate information services, and also impact-based multi-hazard early warning, early action. And then I'll conclude with climate information for infrastructure design and resilience financing. I'll also look at investment criteria and catalyzing public and private sector finance. We all agree that the climate information and early warning system is very, very important. But then there are significant barriers in attaining this. If you look at the country requirements, the type of challenges that they are looking at, we have identified about 6 main challenges. One, to do with the lack of enabling environment for institutional effectiveness of the hydromet services. We also have limited governmental finances and budgets allocated to the hydromet services and disaster management agencies, and also lack of coverage and scale for effective service delivery in terms of the quantitative and qualitative enhancement of both soft and hard infrastructure. We also have the complexity of the forecasting system and the packaging of information to reach the last mile, as well as market barriers, which inhibits the participation of private sector and other partners into the space. But also importantly is the fact that uncoordinated interventions limit the effectiveness of the investment that has flowed into the countries to date. And so we realize that there is a very high demand in terms of the fact that the demand far exceeds the supply. If you look at the NDCs that were submitted to the Paris Agreement, 77% of Africa and Middle East countries, 76% of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as 100% of Asia Pacific made a request for climate information and early warning systems. But also, if we look at the GCF demand, we see that the growing demand for GCF to support climate information and early warning is really significant. And we could see within the portfolio that 21% goes into modernization of hydromet services and 79% into application and sectors. So we can say that there is a need for a paradigm shift. We cannot do business as usual. The business as usual has led to the type of challenges that we face now. So without GCF, most countries will never be able to meet this demand. And so we've come out with investment pathways, a framework that will enable us to really establish fit for purpose climate information and early warning systems. First, looking at the climate services angle, which creates the relevant, robust climate information that feeds into impact-based multi-hazard early warning systems, as well as a pathway 3 that uses SEWs for infrastructure and risk financing. So a combination of this will lead us to the kind of outcome that we want in terms of the transformation that enables investment in both mitigation and adaptation projects, as well as reliable and robust information to support a well-informed, science-based decision-making. And so if you look at the climate information service, particularly, the focus is to make widely available climate services globally. And these are the key elements that needs to come in terms of supporting the establishment of the National Framework for Climate Services. Also digital technologies in terms of e-infrastructure. And we should be able to also drive up investment in terms of policy governance and political process to drive the uptake of climate information services. But then we find that the two main areas of intervention, which is modernization of hydromet services, as well as hydromet program, the regional hydromet programming. And so the pathway 2 looks at the impact-based multi-hazard early warning system, which also is the focus of making widely available impact-based multi-hazard and early action interventions. And we also identified two main subcomponents in terms of impact-based multi-hazard early warning system and also anticipatory action, which is critical for managing disaster risk. But then in terms of the pathway 3, we look at how climate information could be used for infrastructure design and resilience financing. So we have seen that the application of climate information will enable paradigm shift across all GCF sector results, digital economy and other aspects, strengthen approaches for assessing, avoiding, reducing, and transferring risk and adverse impacts of climate variability and change, as well as the bringing in the private sector to enable us to address most of the critical challenges which currently aren't available. So we see that in this era, digital finance technologies will be important, as well as climate analytics that enables both public and private sector decision-making, as well as stronger analytics for managing public sector and both private sector investments. And so in terms of the financial portfolio, this gives you an example of the type of interventions we've had to date. Currently, we have 100% grants, public sector projects, but we envisage that in future, the private sector will also come on board in terms of looking at how they could work with the government sector, PPPs, to come together and bring about the transformational impact, creating new markets that will enable both public goods element as well as business continuity for the private sector. And so in particular, projects like the intervention in the Philippines, Timor-Leste, the intervention in Antigua and Barbuda, the Georgia Pacific multi-country program, as well as Liberia and others have benefited from this type of intervention. But also we've looked at the interventions that has included loans, like the PDAC of the Niger Basin in West Africa, where the project itself is a transboundary hydrological program, but has a significant component of climate information and early warning systems. So a combination of loans and grants are brought together, highly concessional finance. But the climate services element is purely grants. And then we've also applied this in the case of insurance. If you look at the IFAS Sahel, part of the Great Green Wall, a combination of instruments were put together, with climate information driving the main intervention. And I will say that significantly, the climate information services has been grants, while the other instruments have been combined to bring in the insurance element, the resilience element that goes with investment in the countries. And so I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present to you this very innovative work that we've done together with your inputs, and we are hopeful that we will be able to support you to scale up, to optimize, and then fill in the gaps to enable you to meet the commitments under the Paris Agreement. Thank you very much.
Just want to again invite Racio Visuiti Fernandez. Please. Every stage.
So, hello everybody. I'm Rocío Bizuete, and I'm part of the SAP team. And today I just want to present to you some of the initiatives that we're doing inside the Secretariat with all the knowledge that, like Joseph just explained about the different pathways. How are we actually putting that into use, and what resources we're doing to help you when like programming and originating projects. So before I go into that, I just want to quickly recap on what is the SAP. Need to better understand technology. There we go. Got it. Thank you, Joseph. So what is the SAP? Like the SAP has recently changed the simplified approval process. Before it was 10 million, so now it's 25. So you can be even more ambitious in your early warning system projects. And the ESS category remains the same, remains category C, which we think is an ideal fit when it comes for early warning system projects, because there's normally not a lot of climate risk associated with the project. So they normally don't exceed over category C. That's why we think it's a perfect match. Part of the B32 decision, where it changed all the scope of the SAP, actually mandated the Secretariat to come up with like a fast tracking template. And that's actually what we're doing for this specific sector of early warning system, where we're creating a specific template for both scale-up projects, and we're doing that with Cruz from WMO. So if you're available this evening at 6 o'clock, we're actually having a session with them. You're more than welcome to also come and participate in that one. And we're also doing it based on the sectoral guidelines that Joseph just explained. So to quickly give you an update, like this is how the new SAP template would look for funding proposal, where we will have a specific guidance on what the Secretariat expects to see in each stage of the funding proposal. We normally give a really vague guidance that is applicable for any sector in gray, and that's will still remain, but we're adding for adaptation and for specifically climate information services, what do we expect in each part? So for example, we expect the project to be mostly adaptation. We don't actually expect like a lot of mitigation. So it should be an adaptation project or maybe cross-cutting, but it should never be more than that. We also expect the project to be at least like 10 to 15 years. That's like normally the descent of the projects. We're mostly like actually targeting pathway 1 and 2, like that Joseph explained, that like climate information and like multi-hazard. So normally that's 10 to 15 years. And we're actually doing is using some of the projects that you actually submitted and got approved, like as a reference. So also like what has worked. And we're also using the knowledge from the sectoral guidelines to come up with this. We would like to have this by the end of the year. And this is going to come in a package. There's going to be the sub-FP guided template. And there's also going to be a guided appraisal template. So we're also, the Secretariat is accountable to what we want to read in the project. So we're both accountable for the review times, we're accountable for the information that we're asking for, and that also makes the process transparent. With these, we're hoping to have like a faster origination. So you're also aware of the information needed and there shouldn't be any surprises on that part. And we're also accountable to the information that we're asking from you. So the process will be faster. We're doing this in coordination with ITAP. So again, there shouldn't be any surprises at that stage. And then as part of the new SAP policy, it is highly encouraged that all SAPs going to the board have the pre-negotiated FAA. Therefore, also the approval stage and the post-approval stage will be faster. So we're really working and we're putting all our efforts into streamlining the entire process from origination, review, and approval. So like we can actually feel the needs of the countries and like get your projects as fast as possible. So I'm just gonna leave my information here. Like if you have any questions, you can just message on WUBA, and we're also available in the SAP page or like the SAP team. Joseph is well known about this, but of course I'll be in the room in case there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Now I would like to start invited to the stage the panel discussion member. First, I would like to invite Mr. Joachim Jotelift. Hello, please come to the stage. Miss, maybe, sorry. And Jateru, Program Officer of National Implementing Entities, Secretariat from Kenya. Prudencio Calado, Assistant Vice President, Land Bank, Filipina. Please come to the stage. Tim Aful Komsung, Chief of Climate Finance Officers, AFDB. Benjamin Laroquette, Regional Technical Advisor, UNDP. Please join to the stage for the panel discussions. We have more? Okay. Oh, some of the members will join us online, sorry. I thought all attended in person. So some of the panels will join us by online from over applications. Every panel members, you have 4 minutes to describe with your thoughts on the topics. So now I hand over to Mr. Prudencio to start.
Hello. 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 Yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting Land Bank to this forum on climate information and early warning system. Before I start, maybe I need to introduce to you our country, the Philippines. The Philippines is highly vulnerable to impacts of climate change and natural disasters. In recent years, it has experienced more frequent extreme weather events. A projected 20% increase in extreme rainfall over the country would continue until 2040. The country has an average of about 20 tropical cyclones per year, and the observed trends show a slight decrease in frequency of tropical cyclones, but there is an increase in number of strong tropical cyclones. The GCF-sponsored multi-hazard impact-based forecasting and early warning system is designed to improve weather forecasting from hazard-based to impact-based forecasting and early warning systems. This is a departure from the traditional weather forecasting of telling the public on what the weather will be to what the weather will do. It aims to increase the availability and access to timely, accurate, and actionable warning information and enhance the understanding of warnings or alerts by end users, particularly in the last mile. The project's main components are the following. Number one, weather and climate risk information. Second component is the impact-based forecasting and early warning system, supported by a knowledge and decision support system. The third component is improving national and local capacities and forecast-based early actions and financing. And finally, the fourth one is the mainstreaming of climate risk information and multi-hazard impact-based forecasting early warning system in development planning and policymaking processes, and institutionalized people-centered multi-hazard impact-based forecasting early warning system in the Philippines. So the executing entity is the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, which is the country's meteorological agency. This is being implemented together with 8 other agencies and local government units. Our institution, the Land Bank of the Philippines, serves as the direct access entity. So going now on in terms of funding proposal approval, our experience on this first project of Land Bank and even also the first project of the country was very encouraging, as it took us just around 10 months from the submission of the concept note to the approval of the funding proposal by the board. This was done via simplified approval process, or SAP. The relatively fast development and approval of the project is attributed to the excellent support and contribution of the main parties in the GCF financing architecture, which are the GCF, the direct access entity, the project proponent, and the NDA. But in this project, it was the project proponent or the executing entity which delivered exemplarily. This is quite ideal, as PAGASA has the mandate, authority, and technical expertise, and they will eventually be the project owner or implementer. The key lesson here is that the lead role should always be given to the project proponent or the lead executing entity. On the other hand, the Green Climate Fund, the direct access entity, and the NDA will need to deliver their respective roles as envisioned in the GCF architecture. Hence, the executing entity or the project proponent should be fully committed to develop the funding proposal, and it must also have the mandate and capacity to implement the project. The major challenge occurred after GCF board approval was due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which made it difficult to coordinate with the 8 co-executing entities of the project. Thus, the compliance to the various conditionalities, FAA signing, FAA effectiveness, and disbursement took a longer time. So the situation is further aggravated by the changes in administration or leadership in the concerned executing entities due to the recent national and local elections in the country. Said conditions are extraordinary and beyond the control of the project. But on a positive note, the long process after the board approval has provided us with the opportunity to learn and experience the FAA review and approval process of the government and the GCF. It also highlighted the need for a clear legal arrangement or agreements with co-executing entities. So we documented all these processes with the preparation of the Land Bank Direct Access Entity Operations Manual, as well as the project's operations manual to serve as guide in future projects of Land Bank with the GCF. Aside from ensuring climate resiliency and avoiding loss of lives and properties, additional benefit for developing the multi-hazard impact-based forecasting early warning system project is that we have gained a better understanding and experience in preparing the climate rationale. It means that this type of project is an ideal first project of a country or a direct access entity to ensure resiliency and even facilitate the preparation of climate rationale for future projects under the GCF. So for now, that's our input for this forum. So thank you very much.
Please give applause to the first panel. Now I'd like to request the help of a technical team who already in the queue online to join us. Joachim, maybe, or Benjamin. So I would like to invite Mr. Benjamin Lorquet, Regional Technical Advisor, UNDP, to join us from WOVA Applications online.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. This is a great opportunity, and I'm really happy to have a few minutes to kind of share UNDP's perspective and approach on climate information early warning systems. So I'll be very brief. You are all familiar with the recent history in the last 5-10 years in the effort to strengthen hydromet services in countries. And so today what's important, I think, is the future. And the UNDP approach going forward is based on two new kind of items or pillars. One is to work at scale. And this is very important for us to try and take an approach which we had already done previously with some projects in Africa, but which we want to strengthen. And this is a multi-country approach where we use the programmatic approach of the GCF to try and invest in multi-country programs that are often geographically located in the same region and the same ecosystems. And that's one. And the second new approach is to ensure that we are linking climate information early warning systems with what we call anticipatory action or early action. And this link is really important for the impact that these projects hope to have, because we really want the population who might be able to receive warnings to be able to act upon them. So these are really the two kind of new approaches of UNDP. We are currently developing a multi-country program in Southern Africa in partnership with WFP, IFRC, and the UN University and GCF, of course. And we hope to explore how this new methodology can really deliver on the ground. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think considering the UN Secretary General's call on early warning systems for all, this is really the right time to come together and try and coordinate each other in order to deliver this on the ground. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you, Benjamin. Please join me, applaud to Benjamin. Now I'd like to invite in the queue, Joachim from UNEP. Hello, Joachim.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity, and greetings from UNEP headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. I am very pleased to present briefly on UNEP's experiences with the climate information and early warning systems portfolio under the GCF. At this moment, we have 2 approved initiatives in this field. The first one is a 49.9 million program covering 5 Pacific Island countries. And the second one is a 21.7 million project for Timor-Leste. Both initiatives focus on holistic strengthening of the 4 key elements of multi-hazard early warning systems. And in doing so, these initiatives are well aligned with the GCF sector guide, especially the pathways 1 and 2. Because, for example, the projects include establishing national frameworks for climate services, filling the gaps in the national observation networks, building capacity for impact-based forecasting and early warning, and also delivering sector-specific climate analytics. For example, climate services for health in Timor-Leste. We are also introducing forecast-based financing and early warning, early action in these projects. We also aim to create an enabling environment to deliver on pathway 3 of this sector guide by working with the National Hydromet Services to identify opportunities for private sector engagement and to develop long-term financing strategies for climate services. I would like to briefly mention a few best practices and lessons learned so far, and these include taking a holistic people-centered approach covering all elements of effective early warning systems, investing in capacities beyond equipment, but covering the entire value chain of climate services, engaging multiple stakeholders, and also promoting strategic partnerships. Like our initiatives are all anchored in a broad coalition of national, regional, and international partners convened by UNEP. Furthermore, I would like to mention the importance of capitalizing on multi-country opportunities where relevant, as we have done in the Pacific Islands, for example. And lastly, addressing cross-cutting issues through an emphasis on social inclusion and gender responsiveness. In terms of challenges for this type of projects, I would like to mention the challenge of ensuring long-term financing for the operation and maintenance of observation networks. And to address this, recently WMO, UNDP, and UNEP have created the Systematic Observations Financing Facility, or the SOF. And the aim of the SOF is to provide long-term financial and technical support for basic weather and climate observations, especially in LDCs and SITs. Finally, in terms of future programming, indeed, there is a huge need and a huge demand for projects and programs of this nature. And correspondingly, UNEP has a rapidly growing pipeline of projects all over the world addressing climate information and early warning systems. And in particularly, we are looking forward to advancing on our proposals for the Maldives and for Azerbaijan, which are in the advanced stages of consideration of the GCF process. So with this, thank you very much once again. Over.
Thank you, Joachim. Please give up applause to Joachim. And now I would like to invite who ready on the queue? No more? Okay. That's mean we only have three panel discussions, two via online. And now to move to the questions for the discussions, I would like to invite Mr. Edson to put the questions. Oh, sorry. We have Mr. Tim Aful-Compton, Chief of Climate Finance Officer from AFDB. Please, you have 4 minutes to express your thoughts related to the topic. Please, you have the stage.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Timothy Kumsin with the African Development Bank. And very sorry for coming in late because we also having a bilateral meeting with the GCF. And so I have to run here. And as you could see, I'm still panting. I was thinking I was going to have about 1 minute to just calm down, but I will try and do it in this panting mode, maybe. Climate information and early warning system is very, very, very important. In fact, we have been talking about, if possible, that should be the foundation for all the adaptation projects. I mean, you cannot just jump into having an agricultural funding proposal without actually doing the climate information. And this also brings to the need for having the national MET systems really capacitated. Because for adaptation projects, you will need climate rational, particularly in the area of the risk and the vulnerability, to go through the final the proposal. And if the national MET services are not really in the capacity to provide the data that is needed, currently ITAP is even requesting for point source observation data, which means that the foundation should be climate information. So every country at least have to have that support to enhance their climate information systems. And early warning is also, in line with climate information and projecting risks that are potential, and then having the early warning measures. I believe that not only in agriculture, but also in the area of infrastructure, we've been doing a lot in the area of communities, in the area of sea level rise. But I believe that we also have to be looking into other areas, more into climate resilient infrastructure. And then also the possibility of bringing in private sector participants will also be very, very, very important. In fact, there are a lot of private sector companies that are developing very sophisticated systems for generating and also particularly for disseminating climate information and early warning system. We just had about 2 companies that we before we came here, that we were really blown about what they are doing to disseminate climate information and some agronomic advisory services to farmers. And the private sector are doing this, but then we would need to bring them into several of the GCF projects to help them also to align, with some of the expectations and the climate investment criteria of GCF. In a way, we also shaping, the priorities that they should also focus on. So with these 4 points, I wasn't here when it was started, but these are the 4 main points that I have that I believe is relevant for our consideration at this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Please give applause to Tim for his thoughts. So that means we have 4 panel, 2 in persons, attended in persons, 2 others via online. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Edson Salas Payo to put the questions, to raise the questions to the panel, please.
Thank you very much. So colleagues, for the question and answer segment, we have to use Hoover, the application. I hope you have all managed to log into the application. So can you use the application to type in your questions? So, yeah. But for those who are here, maybe we can go ahead and ask questions that you may have, since we already have our panel up front. So yes, go ahead. So I'll start by introducing yourself and then ask your question afterwards.
Thank you very much. So my name is Khawla Jewi. I'm from OSS, Saharan Sahel Observatory. It's direct access entity, and it's regional, based in Tunis, working mainly with African countries. So I have like a question for the panel and maybe other participants. We are talking about climate information and early warning system, and I've just heard the panelists saying that we need that information to write our climate rationale, to develop our funding proposals. Now the point is GCF ready to give funds or to give money for the countries to implement an observatory system or observation system to gather climate data, to be able to provide that local data, which is not available in many countries? Or is there a specific window for the early warning systems? Because we are meant to use that existing data to write the climate rationale. But if we don't have it, what is the option that the GCF could offer? Because sometimes if we don't have the data, it's quite challenging to write a good climate rationale. This is my question. Thank you.
All right. Maybe one other question before we hand over. So go ahead, please. The mic is coming. Okay, can we have the mic? Yep.
Oh, thank you, moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Balisi Kgopolang. I'm from Botswana. I work for the Department of Meteorological Services, which is the focal point for the climate change, implementation of the Climate Change Convention. My question touches more on the previous intervention, but I'll further elaborate so you can understand where I'm coming from. So the first presenter, GCF, they did put it into context to say, well, they are trying to support. One of the issues that came to mind was infrastructure for weather observation, which is like I'm saying, it touches on what she has just said. It is a well-known fact that infrastructure for data collection platforms, not only in Africa, but globally, it's really missing. There are so many data gaps. And like the previous interventions, provision of equipment to fill those gaps is quite vital for us to be able to understand the climate system and to see where the observations are needed. And colleagues, you will agree with me that as members of the World Meteorological Organizations, WMO specifically stipulates the ideal data and station density that is required for you to collect and be able to issue adequate forecasts. And this, particularly in Africa, it's a gap that we observe from day to day. So which becomes very difficult for issues of forecasting and collecting and analyzing data. So just like the previous interventions, I just want to pose it to other UN agencies like UNDP and UNEP who presented virtually to say, are they also in a position to provide, in line with the recommendations of the WMO, the station network to help us better observe this automatic weather stations and radar networks to be able to collect such data for early warning purposes. And secondly, I just want to establish whether those entities I've just mentioned, are they in a position to support climate research? Because if you're going to have to make a case on a proposal, you need to have undertaken research, obviously supported by the information so gathered, that can better inform you going forward and create the necessary climate scenarios that are important for you to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. For now, I'd like to hand over to Joseph for responses to the two questions. Over to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me at the back? It's very clear what the mandate of GCF is in terms of supporting countries to build fit for purpose climate information and warning systems. And I clearly articulated in terms of the 3 paradigm shifting pathways that I articulated. And so the focus is to make widely available climate information services. That's the pathway 1. So we build infrastructure. We think that climate services is basically IT services. And where the transformation will come from is leveraging on the digital transformation to build the systems and processes that will enable this to happen. And so definitely that's what we do. A lot of the investment goes into infrastructure, observing networks. We look at a business model that will enable the sustainability of those investments, because that is where the challenge came from in terms of the problems that we are having. There is no sustainability models within the hydromet services. So these are some of the problems that we are trying to address. But not only that, but we look at the broader value chain. How do we look at the observing where the input comes, the computational infrastructure, value addition, packaging, and then dissemination to the last mile. So pathway 2 with this with early warning, early action, takes this information and through maybe forecast-based financing reaches the last mile. And so definitely, yes, that is what we are doing. All our interventions are WMO compliant. We have an arrangement with GBON and the SOC that our colleague from UNEP spoke about. And so definitely that is why this session is also very important, and we'll be happy to work with you to be able to do that. But I will let some of the accredited entities who have already approved projects maybe respond to this. Thank you.
Tim, if anything to add? Or...
Thinking since I came to meet Joachim. What she said is very, very important. And I think it's also an opportunity for me to reiterate what I said, that it will be good for at least every country who is eligible to GCF resources to have climate information and early warning system funding proposal approved. It's very, 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 very important. And I want to reiterate that. Now, we've been trying to, as an accredited entity, we've been trying to work with countries. The first country that we work with is Liberia. Currently, we are working with Sierra Leone. And we are also looking at the countries that were affected by the Hurricane Idai. And for next GCF2, we are also looking at the SITs. In fact, actually, the SITs should have come earlier, but as most of you may be aware, GCF have a somewhat unwritten requirement for MDBs. And so for MDB, every funding proposal that you bring to GCF, you should have a co-financing. And we do not have that co-financing window for the SITs. So it's now that we are working on so that we could have those co-financing windows for the SITs. And we are looking at supporting the African SITs. At least I believe that it's really it's too late, but better late than never. This should have been done about 4 or 5 years ago, but better late than never. And so we will ensure that at least all the states at least have some climate information and early warning system. Their MET services have been improved. They have sophisticated climate data generation, processing, dissemination, and also utilization systems in place. Because you cannot talk for adaptation when that foundation is not really built. And I believe that when we have those co-financing for the states, after we've handled Liberia, Sierra Leone, and then the Hurricane Idai, which is about 4 countries, including Malawi, Mozambique, Mauritius. At least for African Development Bank, we would have played some role. And we will just appeal to GCF, if they could relax the condition of co-financing, I think we can take almost every African country and help them to have this climate information system. We will support the preparation and everything, but with that requirement, we have to wait till the countries submit their allocation, and out of that allocation, we could also bring in the climate, the co-financing. So maybe we can talk about that and look at how GCF, particularly for the states, we could look at how that requirement could be waived so that at least urgently we help all the states in Africa for this climate information and early warning system, which is very, 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 very important.
Thank you very much. We do have 2 questions online. So the first question to Joseph is from Ayoteji Palemi. He says, how can the meteorological agencies be strengthened to deliver on their mandate to provide climate information? So over to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the key elements of this is what I've articulated in my presentation. GCF has a very strong program to enable every country that is within the criteria to be able to access resources to build a fit for purpose climate information and warning systems. And we have begun this in those countries where we have approved projects. You have to go through your NDA, you have to articulate your problems, and we will work with you through accredited agencies to help you acquire the relevant systems and processes for that. We also will support you to develop a business model for sustainability, because that is very important. We have an investment criteria that determines how you can access GCF resources. And I think that is the best way that we can help invest and then sustain those investments beyond the life cycles of those projects. But I would also like to add that we have already worked with WMO a structured access platform that allows countries with weaker data infrastructure, sources to access WMO and IPCC data sets that are being used for project preparation. So that is our short-term strategy. But in the long term, we will work towards making sure that every country, particularly Africa, LDCs and SIDS, have a strengthened fit for purpose, a hydromet service and disaster management agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have one last question online on SAP from Mark. So the question is, in the case of multiple country programs for climate information and early warning systems, can we use the SAP modality to apply for both the overall program funds as well as for the individual countries in the program? So I would like to invite my colleague Rosie to maybe respond to the question. Can we have the mic?
Thank you, and thank you for the online question. In principle, the answer would be as long as there's enough funds to cover both activities, yes, there shouldn't be any issue. However, since we're trying to keep the SAP streamlined and simple, my personal suggestion would be to have 2 different projects to be able to get them approved faster, rather than have a more complex and complicated project that might take more time and we'll get more feedback when look into it. So personally, I would suggest to maybe have 2 projects. However, there's no restrictions as to how the project or the program will be articulated. So if there's enough funding, it would be possible.
Thank you. If you want to add, Joseph, maybe.
I don't have any more to add to what she has said. I think if you keep it simple is better, but it has to be structured in the way that aligns with the guidance, the paradigm shifting pathways. And detailed information on this is in the sector guide, which I think people can access. But I think maybe our colleague from the Philippines wants to add to some of the questions before we hand over to you.
Yes, sir. Earlier I mentioned that this information, climate information early warning system is an ideal first project of a country or a direct access entity. But again, our colleague from the African Development Bank mentioned that it should be the foundation of GCF project. So I subscribe to that statement, because of course we know very well the benefit of this type of project, not just on reducing loss in lives and properties, but even, of course, as mentioned earlier, in the development of future projects. Because if we have established good information on climate information, of course, we can easily, or we can facilitate project preparation. So with the experience that we had with the GCF and even with our NDA, I think I can say that the support of the NDA and the GCF for this type of project is quite substantial. And as I've mentioned, we just need 10 months to have our projects approved. So that's for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions, colleagues. I would like to hand over to the moderator. Over.
Maybe Mr. Joachim and others, if you still online participate in the discussions, if you have anything to respond to the questions, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So just responding to some of the questions, I think several speakers pointed to the critical issue of data scarcity and data gaps. And indeed, this is something we are trying to address in our projects. And yes, they do include investment in observation, in infrastructure. But of course, in order to meet the GCF investment criteria, these projects go much beyond the investment in equipment in order to deliver actual impact on the ground. But for the observation networks, we do follow the WMO metrics as much as possible, including those for the global basic observing network, as mentioned by Joseph. I would also like to say that, yes, these projects are very much focused on strengthening the national hydromet services, but they also go beyond that and they support the Met services to engage with the disaster management authorities, with the sectors, different line industries, the private sector, as well as the communities at the last mile. So I think GCF is really looking for holistic initiatives that deliver transformative impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Joachim. If Mr. Benjamin, if you have, you still monitor the process. If you have anything to say, please.
No, thank you very much. Not at this point.
Thank you. I think if no more, please.
Yeah. Very sorry about that. I am somebody who don't like just talk shop and then nothing comes in with my private sector background. I believe that you know, particularly the small island countries have to be helped for climate climate information early warning system. And this is where I would like to, you know, make an appeal to GCF, actually. If it's possible, you know, to really have these countries, you know, given the opportunity. AFDB is willing to support, you know, but then for us to bring like co-financing, the countries have to find to submit a formal request. And some of them, because of COVID, they are not going to have the resources to submit a formal request that use this from our headroom as part of this. But these countries need it. This morning, I was talking with one of the NDA from Lesotho, right? And they really have need of this. We're trying to work with Eswatini. We're trying to work with Sao Tome and Principe, Cape Verde. All these small island countries, they don't have any CI climate information and early warning system approved. If they are going to submit a funding proposal, they are requested to have these climate data. They don't have the system for generating a lot of these point source data. So I want to make an appeal, you know, to GCF. I think the best thing that will come out of this, you know, meeting, particularly for the African states, is to, you know, be able to really help them for the next board, the next two boards, you know, so that all the states will have at least a climate information and early warning system funding proposal. Starts implementing projects that will enhance the capacity of their national met systems to generate and process some of these climate information systems that they could use for their decision making. I believe that if, you know, we could have that outcome, our time here will be well spent. Thank you.
Thank you for the contributions. Indeed, our planet is in an emergency facing the climate, especially climate-induced disaster. I want to conclude the sessions by sharing a short information to the participants. Timor-Leste has one experiences back to 2000. On the 4th April 2000, we have affected by tropical cyclone, and only less than 24 hours, we lost in terms of economic loss related to infrastructure destructions, more than 300 million losses. In terms of human death, 44 death. That's mean if we have best system in place to predict the tropical cyclones, we may reduce the impact both to humans and also to important infrastructure. That's why this discussion is very important. We hope GCF, credit entity, and all partners can make great effort to help country that still have huge gap in the meteorological infrastructure conditions to improve those infrastructure conditions to be able to minimum understanding scenario and predict scenario and preventing the impact. For all participants, for all the speakers and panels, I would like to invite all of us to give our applause to those important contributions. And I would like to thanks to all participants, including panels contribution from online and also the question from remote participants via email, via online. And again, thank you for all of your contributions and your active discussions. Thank you.